I discovered the gold hideout that Pablo Escobar had hidden in the jungle of the Magdalena Medio, and that sentenced me to death 3 times before I turned 30. There were 247 bars of pure gold, each weighing 12 kilos, buried beneath an ancient ceiba tree that only I knew how to recognize. No one has known this story until today. I was born in 1965 in the Santo Domingo Savio neighborhood, in a little house made of rotten wooden planks with a rusted zinc roof that roared like 1,000 drums every time it rained. The floor was just packed dirt. There were 6 of us siblings sleeping on 2 mattresses that smelled of dampness and defeat. My mother washed other people's clothes for 14 hours a day for 3,000 pesos a week, and my father had gone to seek his fortune in the mines of Segovia when I was 4 years old. He never came back. They said a collapse had killed him, but I always suspected he had simply found another family, another misery that seemed easier to bear than ours. The neighborhood smelled of cheap fried food, dog shit, and burnt gasoline from the buses that climbed the hill belching black smoke along those steep streets that seemed designed to break anyone's knees. From the glassless window of the house, I could see all of Medellin spreading out below, with the lights of El Poblado shining like promises that would never be meant for us. The rich down below, us up above. And in between, an abyss of money that no poor person had ever managed to cross. When I was 11 years old, I discovered I had a gift. I didn't look for it, it simply appeared. Just like the things that show up to screw up your life forever. Don Hernando, the old owner of the little grocery shop on the corner, sent me to collect a debt from a guy who lived in Aranjuez. He handed me a piece of paper with the address and the amount, 47,000. When I arrived, the man showed me a stack of bills and said the 47 was all there. I looked at the bills for 3 seconds, just 3. Then I told him he was short 11,400 and not to mess with me because I wasn't stupid. The guy froze. He counted each bill one by one, separating them, and there were exactly 35,600. He looked at me like I was the devil himself. "How did you know, kid?" I had no way to explain it. I simply knew. I looked at the bills and something in my head calculated thickness, weight, quantity, everything in an instant, as naturally as breathing or blinking. When I told Don Hernando, the old man laughed at first, but then he tested me with a pile of mixed bills. When I guessed the exact amount in less than 5 seconds, he stopped laughing. He looked at me with a mix of respect and fear that I wouldn't understand until many years later. "Carlos," he said, his voice slightly trembling, "you've got one hell of a gift. Take care of it. And take care of yourself, because there are people who would kill to have what you carry in that head of yours." I didn't pay attention. I was 11 years old. What did I know about people killing? Between the ages of 12 and 18 I worked at everything a kid from Santo Domingo could possibly do. Bus helper carrying sacks at the North Terminal for 200 pesos a trip. Messenger at a pharmacy downtown, riding up and down those steep streets on a rusty bicycle that weighed more than I did. Construction helper, mixing cement until cracks opened in my hands and they bled. Lottery ticket seller on street corners, learning numbers, combinations, probabilities. In every job I used my gift without anyone noticing. I counted the betting money before the gambler even finished pulling it from his pocket. I knew exactly how much was in the pharmacy cash register with just a quick glance. I calculated the workers' pay faster than the foreman with his Japanese calculator. But I was still earning shit, 80,000 pesos a month on a good month, 100,000 in December if there was a bonus. Meanwhile, the guys from the lower neighborhoods arrived on brand new motorcycles with gold chains as thick as my finger, burning in one night what my mother took 6 months to save. I knew where that money came from. All of Medellin knew. It was 1983, and the cartel was no longer a secret to anyone. The anger grew inside me, slow, silent, poisonous. Every time I counted money for someone else, I thought about how many bills it would take to get my mother out of that shitty house. Every time a boss delayed paying me or stole hours from me, the anger became heavier, thicker, harder to ignore. It wasn't anger toward anyone in particular, it was anger toward everything, toward a system that rewarded bastards and punished people who worked honestly. Toward a country where the only way to stop being poor was to become a criminal or die trying. At 18, I got a job at a currency exchange downtown, on Calle Colombia, between Junin and Palace. The owner was Don Aurelio Monsalve, a bald old man with a white mustache and rat-like eyes who had made a fortune exchanging dollars since the 1960s. He hired me because he needed someone who could count fast and wouldn't steal. I fit both requirements. The job wasn't complicated. Receive pesos, hand out dollars. Receive dollars, hand out pesos. Calculate rates, check bills, detect counterfeits. Don Aurelio taught me everything he knew about fake money. In the first 2 weeks, he showed me how to identify real paper by touch, by the sound it made when folded, by the security fibers, the watermark, the microthreads. He explained that $100 bills were the most commonly counterfeited and that the best counterfeiters in the world were right here in Colombia, working for the cartel. Gringos think their bills are impossible to copy, he said one afternoon while examining a stack with a magnifying glass. Bullshit. A good Colombian counterfeiter can make a bill that even the Federal Reserve can't tell apart from the real thing. I listened and absorbed everything. I learned to detect high-quality fakes, the ones that passed 80% of the tests but failed the other 20%. I learned that the Medellin cartel had its own dollar printing operation somewhere in the mountains, and that those counterfeit bills financed operations impossible for the Americans to trace. I also learned that Don Aurelio, with all his appearance of an honest old man, had been laundering money for the cartel for 15 years. I didn't care. Money doesn't smell, my mother used to say. And I needed money. In March of 1984, everything turned upside down. A man walked into the exchange house at 4 in the afternoon, when there were barely any customers left. He was tall, at least 1.85 meters, with a perfectly trimmed black mustache and eyes that seemed to analyze every detail they looked at. He wore a gray Italian-cut suit, a gold Rolex on his wrist, leather shoes polished like mirrors, and he had a Paisa accent, but refined. Like someone who had studied abroad or dealt often with wealthy people. "Are you Carlos?" he asked without greeting me. "Depends on who's asking." He smiled. His teeth were perfect, as white as the cocaine he probably moved. "They call me the accountant. I work for important people, people who need someone with your abilities." "What abilities?" I asked. "The ones you use to count 200 million pesos in less than a minute without making a single mistake." A chill ran down my spine. How the hell did he know that? I hadn't mentioned my ability to anyone for years, except Don Hernando. And the old man had died of a heart attack in '81. "Don Aurelio talks too much when he's had a few aguardientes," the accountant said, as if reading my thoughts. "And we hear everything that's said in this city. What do you want?" I asked. "We want you to work with us. Counting, checking, detecting. We pay well." "How well?" The accountant pulled a stack from the inside pocket of his jacket and placed it on the counter. I didn't even need to count it. It was exactly 500,000 pesos, more than I made in 5 months. "This is just so you come to a meeting. If what you see convinces you, we talk about real numbers. If not, you keep the money and we never cross paths again." "What do you say?" I didn't ask who he worked for, what I'd have to do, or why they were looking for me. Nothing. I just took the stack, slipped it into my pants pocket, and accepted. 3 days later, the accountant picked me up in a dark blue Mazda 626 with tinted windows. We drove about 45 minutes along roads I didn't recognize, climbing toward the mountains of eastern Antioquia. He didn't open his mouth the entire trip. Neither did I. I watched the coffee plantations go by, the cattle farms, the little towns that appeared and disappeared around the curves. We arrived at a finca surrounded by 3-meter walls topped with barbed wire. 2 guard booths at the entrance, with armed men carrying rifles I had only seen in movies. German shepherds patrolled the perimeter. Cameras on every corner. Narco security, because they were narcos. I knew it from the start. The accountant led me to the main house. 2 stories, white columns, a garden that looked like something out of a magazine. Inside, the luxury was obscene. Italian leather furniture, paintings that looked authentic, a marble fountain in the middle of the foyer, and a golden statue of an angel above it. In the living room there were 3 men. I recognized the first one instantly. The whole country knew that face. Short, heavy-set, mustache, curly hair, small but sharp eyes, as if they could see what you were hiding. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria. The boss. The head of the Medellin cartel. The most wanted man on the planet. Next to him sat another man who looked very similar, but thinner, with straighter hair and a colder, more calculating expression. Gustavo Gaviria, his cousin. The financial brain. The one who handled the numbers while Pablo moved the violence. The third was a thin guy, around 30, with a scar running across his left cheek from his eye to his jaw. His eyes were dead, no feeling at all. Shark eyes. Later I learned they called him La Kika, and that he was one of the cartel's most feared hitmen. He had killed more than 100 people with his own hands. "So you're the kid who counts money just by looking at it," Pablo said without getting up from the sofa. "Sit down. We're going to do a test." I sat in front of him. Gustavo snapped his fingers, and two men walked in carrying a large black leather suitcase. They opened it on the table. There were stacks of dollars, hundreds of them piled without order. "Count," Pablo ordered. I looked at the bills. My head did what it always did, calculated thickness, density, distribution. In 4 seconds I had the answer. $2,347,000, I said. "But there's a detail." Pablo raised an eyebrow. "What detail?" "There are about $80,000 in fake bills mixed in. They're good, but fake. The paper is a little thicker and the green is half a shade darker than the real ones." Silence filled the room. Gustavo looked at Pablo. Pablo looked at La Kika. La Kika fixed me with that shark stare, and for a second I thought they were going to kill me right there. Then Pablo burst out laughing. A loud, genuine laugh that made his whole belly shake. "Son of a bitch," he said, still laughing. The accountant was right. This kid is something else. Gustavo pulled out a calculator and started counting each bill. It took him 47 minutes. When he finished, he looked at me with a strange mix of disbelief and respect. $2,347,200, he announced. "You were off by 200. "The 200 are at the bottom of the suitcase," I said. "There's a compartment. A hidden pocket in the lower right corner." Gustavo checked and pulled out 2 $100 bills from the exact place I mentioned. Pablo stopped laughing. He held my gaze for a long moment, evaluating me as if I were merchandise. "What's your name, kid?" "Carlos. Carlos Restrepo." "Carlos Restrepo," he repeated. "You just earned yourself a job. From today on you work for me. Directly with me. Understood?" "Understood, patron." "Good. The accountant will explain everything. Gustavo, give him 100 million as an advance. 100 million pesos. In 1984, that was more than my mother would have earned in her entire life. How do you want to be paid?" Gustavo asked. "Cash, properties, gold?" The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me how I wanted to be paid. I thought quickly. Cash could be traced, confiscated, or stolen. Properties left records, paperwork, trails. There was only one thing I truly needed. "Gold," I replied. "Pay me in gold." Pablo laughed again. "I like this kid," he said to Gustavo. "He thinks like we do." I didn't think like them. I thought better. Because while they only saw another accountant, I saw an opportunity to escape. I just needed patience and time, two things I had plenty of. My job was simple in theory, impossible in practice. I had to count, verify, and classify all the money that came in and out of the cartel. The cash from cocaine sales in the United States. Payments to coca paste suppliers in Peru and Bolivia. Bribes to politicians, police officers, judges, and military officials. Investments in properties, legal businesses, soccer teams. And on top of that, I had to detect the counterfeit bills that other cartels tried to slip into the transactions. The volume was insane. In my first week, I counted more than $500 million. In my first month, more than $2 billion. Every day suitcases, boxes, and garbage bags full of cash appeared. Dollars, German marks, Swiss francs, British pounds, of every denomination, from every country, and in every possible condition. I worked in a warehouse on the outskirts of Envigado, a gigantic hangar filled with stainless steel tables, industrial counting machines, and a group of 15 people who answered only to me. But the machines fell short, they were slow and made mistakes. I was faster and more accurate. After a month, Gustavo ordered that absolutely all the money be checked by my hands before being processed. "If Carlos says it's fine, he told the others. If Carlos says there's a problem, then there's a problem. That level of authority was enormous, and also dangerous. Because with power comes temptation, and with temptation, risk. In the first 6 months, I didn't touch a single peso. Not one. I wanted to earn the complete trust of Pablo and Gustavo before putting my plan into motion. Every week they paid me in gold bars, at first small ones, 1 kilo, then bigger ones, 5, later 10. I hid them in a stash that I had designed myself, in a place no one knew about and that would never raise suspicion. The place was perfect. In Santo Domingo Savio, in the same house where I grew up, there was a mango tree in the backyard that my mother planted when I was born. That tree had grown right above an abandoned sewer for Medellin's old water system, a brick tunnel 2 meters in diameter that had been unused for decades. I discovered that tunnel when I was 13, playing treasure hunts with my brothers. No one else knew it existed. No one would think to look for gold beneath a mango tree in the poorest neighborhood of the city. Only I knew that, under those roots, in that forgotten corridor, a fortune was growing. Between 1984 and 1986, I gathered 73 pure gold bars, 876 kilos. At the price at the time, about $12 million. Enough to disappear from the map. Enough to start a new life anywhere in the world. Enough to never count another man's money again. But I didn't leave. Because greed is a disease with no cure, and by then I was already infected to the soul. On November 15, 1986, while checking a shipment of $17 million that had just arrived from Miami, I found something I should never have seen. Among the bundles appeared a sealed manila envelope, with no markings or sender. I opened it, thinking it contained shipment documents. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Pictures of Pablo, of Gustavo, of the ranches, the routes, the planes, the contacts in the United States. There was also a list of names with addresses and phone numbers, informants, cartel snitches working for the DEA. Someone was betraying Pablo from the inside. And that idiot had placed all the evidence in a shipment that would inevitably pass through my hands. I stared at the photos for a long time. I could hand them to Pablo and earn his gratitude for life. I could destroy them and pretend I had never seen them. Or I could keep them, use them as insurance. A guarantee in case one day everything went to hell. I chose the third option. I put the envelope in my briefcase, finished counting the money, and didn't say anything to anyone. That was the first mistake in a chain that almost cost me my life. The next 2 years were the most intense of my life. The cartel grew without limits, and with it, my responsibilities. Pablo trusted me blindly. He invited me to private meetings, asked for my opinions on investments, treated me almost as if I were family. Gustavo taught me the inner workings of money laundering, the structures of shell companies, the banking circuits through which they moved billions without leaving a trace. I learned everything, memorized everything, and kept accumulating gold. By the end of 1988 I had 142 gold bars, 1,704 kilos, around $28 million. The tunnel beneath the mango tree was practically full. I needed another hiding place. That's when I met Esperanza. She worked at one of the cartel's front companies, an appliance import business in downtown Medellin that existed only to justify financial movements. She was 26 years old, with black hair down to her waist and honey-colored eyes that seemed to detect any lie. The first time I saw her, she was arguing with an accountant over a 200,000 peso error in a balance sheet. "Numbers don't lie," she said, slamming the desk. "Someone stole that money, and I'm going to find out who." I fell in love at that moment. Her character, her intelligence, the way she refused to be intimidated by anyone. I invited her for coffee, then dinner, and finally to my apartment in Laureles, the one I had bought with completely clean money, with no connection to the cartel. I told her I worked in imports, that I traveled often, that I earned well but not as much as it seemed. Lies wrapped in half-truths. "You're not who you say you are," she told me one night after we made love, smoking while staring at the ceiling. "But I don't care. We all carry secrets. What are yours?" "If I tell you, they stop being secrets," I replied. Don't insist, I thought, because I also had secrets I couldn't tell anyone. In June 1989, Gustavo called me to an urgent meeting at the Hacienda Napoles. When I arrived, I found Pablo pacing back and forth like a caged feline, while La Kika calmly cleaned a rifle in the corner, like someone peeling a piece of fruit. "We have a problem," Gustavo said. I felt my heart tighten. Had they found the photos? Did they know they were in my hands? What kind of problem? I asked, trying to sound calm. "There's a rat inside the organization," Gustavo said. "Someone is leaking information to the Americans. Routes, contacts, shipments. 3 operations have been taken down in the last month. We lost $80 million and 6 valuable men." Pablo stopped abruptly, turned toward me, and locked his eyes on mine. "You control every bill that comes in and goes out, Carlos. You know who receives what, who spends too much, who has money they shouldn't have. I want you to find him." It wasn't a suggestion, it was an order. And disobeying Pablo Escobar was the same as signing your own death sentence. "I need access to all the records," I replied. "Payments, bonuses, personal expenses of everyone who handles sensitive information. You have access to everything. Find the son of a bitch. You've got 1 month." I spent the next 4 weeks buried in numbers. Thousands of transactions, hundreds of accounts, dozens of possible suspects. Nothing fit. Nothing made sense. I slept barely 3 hours a day and ate only when I remembered. There was no rest, not even for a second. But the numbers, as always, eventually spoke to me. And very slowly, they began to reveal patterns. There were 3 men with expenses impossible to justify. One was a pilot named Fabio Ochoa, not the famous one, just a namesake with no relation, who had bought a house in Cartagena far beyond what he earned. The second was a chemist from the lab in Caquita, Rodrigo Sanchez, who frequently sent money to an account in Panama. And the last was an accountant at the main office, Mauricio Vargas, whose brother worked at the United States Embassy. I brought all the information to Pablo. He listened without interrupting me, nodding occasionally and asking for precise details about dates and amounts. "Which of the 3 is the rat?" he asked when I finished. "I can't be certain based only on the numbers," I said. "But if I had to bet, I'd say Vargas. His brother at the embassy is the most direct connection to the Americans." Pablo slowly nodded. "Kika." La Kika stood up, put away the rifle he had been cleaning, and walked out without saying a word. 3 days later, Mauricio Vargas's body was found in a city dump. They had punished him brutally, enough to send an unmistakable message: "This is what happens to rats." I won't describe the details, but it was clear he had been killed to set an example. But I knew something Pablo didn't. Vargas was not the informant. The numbers had made that clear to me. I had lied, because the real informant was the pilot, Fabio Ochoa. And he owed me a huge favor that I planned to collect someday. I had condemned an innocent man just to protect my own interests. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt or regret, but because of fear. Fear of what I was becoming. Fear of how easy it had been for me to lie. And fear that, sooner or later, someone would do to me what I had allowed them to do to Vargas. On August 18, 1989, while I was checking a shipment of money in the Envigado warehouse, I found something that changed everything. Among the bundles appeared a black velvet pouch that clearly didn't belong there. I opened it. Inside was a hand-drawn map with exact coordinates pointing to a location deep in the jungle of Magdalena Medio, and a note written in the unmistakable handwriting of Gustavo Gaviria. "Emergency reserve. For Pablo's eyes only. 247 bars. Centuries-old ceiba tree. Coordinates attached. 247 gold bars, almost 3 tons. At the value of the time, more than $40 million. A fortune hidden in the jungle, known only by Pablo and Gustavo. And now by me." I memorized the coordinates immediately, burned the map and the note, and put the empty pouch back at the bottom of the box where no one would find it. For the next 6 months I planned obsessively. I studied maps, researched routes, calculated times and risks. I needed a perfect plan. I would only get one chance. In February 1990, everything went to hell. Esperanza showed up at my apartment at 3 in the morning, crying, shaking, with a bruised eye and dried blood on her lip. "They found me out," she said between sobs. "They know I work for DAS." My world froze. Esperanza, my Esperanza, was a government infiltrator. What? I managed to ask. I've been passing information for 2 years. But someone betrayed me. I have to leave tonight, and you have to come with me, Carlos. If they find out we were together, they'll kill you too. I looked at her, stunned. The woman I loved had been a spy. She had been using me all that time without me realizing it. Every conversation, every intimate moment, every secret, all of it had been part of her mission. "What do you know about me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing serious. That you work in finance, that you travel often. I never knew exactly what you did. I swear." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But I couldn't trust anyone anymore. "You have to leave," I told her. "No. But without me. If I go with you, it confirms you were involved. If I stay, I can deny any connection. It's the only way both of us survive." She looked at me with those honey-colored eyes that I would never see the same way again. "Did you ever love me?" she asked. "Or was I just part of your plan too?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because I no longer knew what was truth or lie in my own life. Esperanza left that same night. I never saw her again. 3 days later, La Kika showed up at the warehouse looking for me. His gaze was the same as always, cold, calculating, deadly. "The boss wants to see you," he said. No. The road to the ranch was the longest journey of my life. Every kilometer was a temptation to escape. But I knew that if I ran, it would confirm any suspicion. I had to face whatever was coming. Pablo was in his office, sitting behind a massive mahogany desk. Gustavo stood beside him. Neither of them was smiling. "Carlos," Pablo said, "did you know your girlfriend worked for DS?" "No, Patron. I found out 3 days ago, when she came to say goodbye." "And why didn't you tell me immediately?" "Because I wanted to be sure before accusing her. I reviewed the numbers, searched for leaks, checked every movement. And I found nothing that connected her. If she passed information, it wasn't financial. There's no trace in my records linking me or my operations." Pablo watched me in silence for several seconds, searching for fear, searching for a lie. Finally he spoke. "I believe you. But understand my position. Your woman was a spy. That automatically puts you under suspicion." "I understand, Patron. You'll keep working. But from now on you'll be under surveillance. Every movement, every transaction, every peso you touch will be verified by someone else. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear." "Good. You can go." I left that office knowing my time was running out. Pablo had forgiven me, yes. But he never forgot. Sooner or later, when he no longer needed me, he would erase me from the map just like he had done with so many others. I had to move up my plan. I had to reach that stash in the jungle before it was too late. On December 2nd, 1990, I managed to get 3 days off by saying I was going to visit my sick mother in Santo Domingo. In reality, I took a bus to Puerto Berrio, rented a motorboat, and headed into the jungle of Magdalena Medio following the coordinates I had memorized months earlier. The trip took 14 hours. 14 hours of suffocating heat, endless mosquitoes, and the constant fear of being discovered. But at dawn on the 3rd day, I found it. The centuries-old ceiba tree was exactly as I imagined, a gigantic tree with a trunk so wide that 10 men would have had to hold hands to circle it, its roots sinking into the earth like ancient tentacles. I dug for 6 hours. My hands hurt, my back was at its limit, but I couldn't stop. Finally, at about 1.5 meters deep, the shovel struck metal. Steel boxes, many of them. Inside were gold bars perfectly arranged, shining with that color that has always symbolized power. I counted them 3 times to make sure. 247 bars, just as Gustavo's note had said. Almost 3 tons of pure gold. About $43 million at the value of the time, enough for 10 lifetimes of luxury. I took 20 bars and hid them in the boat, under a false compartment I had prepared the night before. It was the most I could transport without drawing attention. The rest would have to wait. I returned to Medellin with a feeling that I had finally won, that all those years of obedience, of counting other people's fortunes, of lying, betraying, and surviving had finally meant something. I didn't know that someone had followed me into the jungle. I didn't know that every step I had taken had been watched and reported. When I returned to my apartment, I found La Kika waiting for me with his usual smile, cold and dangerous, and a message from Pablo. I know what you did. I know where the gold is. You have 24 hours to return what you stole and tell me how you knew about the stash. After that, your family dies first. Then you. I looked at the message, looked at La Kika, and then at the 20 gold bars hidden in my briefcase. I had 24 hours to choose. I could return the gold, confess everything, and beg for a quick death. I could escape, abandon my family, and spend the rest of my life hiding. Or I could play my last card, the photos of the informants, the cartel's rats, that I had kept years earlier, evidence of betrayals Pablo had never discovered. 24 hours, an impossible decision, and the lives of everyone I loved hanging from a thread I had woven myself. The 24 hours began ticking the moment La Kika closed the door of my apartment. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my temples, my neck, my hands. My hands trembled as if I were sick. My throat tightened until breathing became a conscious, painful act. I thought about running. I dismissed it. They controlled every exit, every road, every airport. I thought about negotiating, returning the gold and begging for mercy. Useless. Pablo never forgave theft. He only punished it in terrible ways. I thought about killing La Kika before he left the building. Absurd. There were at least 3 men waiting downstairs. If I tried something like that, I would only speed up my family's death. Only one option remained, the photos. I took the manila envelope from the false bottom of my closet, where it had been hidden for more than 3 years. The photographs were still there, slightly aged but clear. Pablo with DEA contacts, marked routes, names of informants still active. That was my only power, my only chance to stay alive. At 6 in the morning the next day, I called the number the accountant had given me years earlier for emergencies. He answered on the second ring. I need to speak with the boss, I said. I have something he needs to see. Something about the rats he still has inside. Silence. Then, you have 1 hour. Hacienda Napoles. Come alone. The road to Napoles was the longest of my life. Every kilometer tempted me to turn back, but I knew there was nowhere to hide. Pablo had eyes everywhere. If I ran, my mother would be the first to die, then my brothers, and finally me, slowly, the way he liked to do it. When I arrived, Pablo was sitting on the porch drinking coffee as if it were any ordinary morning. Gustavo stood beside him with his calculating expression. La Kika was cleaning a knife in a corner without looking at me, though I knew he wasn't missing a detail. Carlos, Pablo said without standing up, you disappointed me. I treated you like a son. Patron, before you say anything, you need to see this. I took out the envelope and placed it on the table. Pablo opened it slowly, studying each photo calmly. His expression didn't change, but I noticed his jaw tighten. Where did you get this? It appeared in a shipment from Miami 3 years ago. I kept it as insurance. I never thought I'd have to use it. Why didn't you bring it to me then? Because I didn't know who to trust. And I still don't. Pablo looked at me for a long time and then glanced at Gustavo. A silent exchange passed between them. The pilot, Gustavo finally said. Fabio Ochoa is in these photos meeting with Americans in Panama. The same one I identified as suspicious months ago, I replied. The one you left alive while Vargas was killed. The silence was absolute. Pablo set the photos on the table and leaned back. You knew Vargas was innocent. Yes. Why didn't you say anything? Because Ochoa owed me a favor. Because I thought I might need it someday. Because in this business, Patron, information is worth more than gold. Pablo let out a short laugh, without a gram of joy. You've got balls, Carlos. I'll give you that. He leaned forward. But you're also a treacherous son of a bitch who robbed me and lied to me for years. The gold was a mistake, I answered. I was desperate. After what happened with Esperanza, I knew my time was running out. And you thought stealing from me would help you live longer? I thought that with enough money I could disappear before you found me. Pablo nodded, as if the logic seemed reasonable. Where's the gold? In my apartment. The 20 bars are intact. I didn't move anything else. Pablo looked again at Gustavo. Another silent exchange. This is what's going to happen, he finally said. You're going to return the 20 bars. You'll keep working for me, but under double surveillance. And you're going to help me find every rat in these photos. If you do it well, maybe I'll let you live. And my family. For now they're safe. But if you betray me again, there won't be any conversation. No second chances. Understood. Understood, Patron. Good. Kika, take him to Medellin and put 2 men on him all day. I left believing I had won, that my move had worked, that the photos had saved me. I didn't know I had just signed a slower, crueler sentence. The next 8 months were hell. 2 men followed me everywhere, to work, to my apartment, even to the bathroom. They slept in shifts in front of my door. They checked every call, every conversation, every expense. Meanwhile, Pablo used the photos to wipe out the network of informants. Fabio Ochoa was found dismembered in bags scattered across the city. Rodrigo Sanchez, the chemist, was found dead in his laboratory. 4 others met the same fate. Each death was a reminder of what awaited me if I failed. On August 11, 1990, Gustavo Gaviria was shot dead in a police operation in Medellin. He died trying to escape through a window during a fierce shootout. I heard the news on the radio while counting money in the warehouse. It knocked the air out of me. Gustavo was the financial brain of the cartel, the only one who truly understood the system I helped keep running. Without him, everything would start to crack. But something else pierced my chest even deeper. Gustavo was the only person, besides me, who knew the exact location of the stash. With him dead, I was the only living man who knew where the remaining 227 gold bars were. The temptation returned with unbearable force. Pablo changed after Gustavo's death. He became more distrustful, more aggressive, more unstable. He started doubting everyone, even me. Meetings felt like interrogations. Every word I said was analyzed. In October 1990, Pablo ordered the execution of the accountant who had recruited me 6 years earlier, the man who had taught me everything. They found him with a bullet in his head inside his car, parked in front of the church where he had gotten married. I never knew why. Maybe they discovered something. Maybe he simply stopped being useful. Maybe it was a message. I went to the wake. I stood in front of the closed coffin, remembering the first time I saw him walk in with his Italian suit and shark-like smile. He had promised me a better life. And he ended up giving me a life of hell disguised as luxury. "I'm sorry, brother," I whispered. "I should have listened to you." But it was already too late. On December 6, 1990, my mother died of a heart attack in her house in Santo Domingo Savio. She was 58 years old, exhausted from a lifetime of work and poverty. I couldn't attend the funeral. Pablo had me locked inside a ranch in Rio Negro for my safety. I found out by phone. My brother Hernando called me crying. "Where are you, Carlos? Why aren't you coming?" "I can't, brother. I'm in trouble. Big trouble. Your mother is dead, you son of a bitch." What could be more important than that? I didn't know what to say. How could I explain that I was a prisoner of the cartel? That all the millions I had counted meant nothing if I couldn't bury my own mother? "You're a disgrace," he said before hanging up. "I wish you had never been born." That night, alone on the ranch, I cried for the first time in years. I cried for my mother, for the life I couldn't give her, for broken promises. I cried for Esperanza, for the love I lost, for the trust that had been destroyed. I cried for myself, for the boy who dreamed of escaping poverty and ended up trapped in a golden prison. I remembered the crumbling house where I grew up, the smell of damp walls, the window without glass where I used to stare at the lights of El Poblado as if they were impossible dreams. All of that was dead. My mother was dead. My dreams were dead too. Only I remained, rotting while the world collapsed around me. I thought about ending everything. I thought about it coldly, almost professionally, like someone reviewing a balance sheet. There was a pistol on the nightstand. I could do it in a second. No surveillance. No fear. No guilt. Just silence. But I didn't do it. Not out of courage, but out of fear. Fear of what might come after. And because, deep down, a part of me still believed I could escape, return to the jungle, recover the gold, and disappear forever. A ridiculous fantasy. But it was the only thing that kept me breathing. On December 2nd, 1993, Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was shot dead on a rooftop in the Los Olivos neighborhood. I saw it on television from a hotel room in Bogotá, where I had been hiding for 3 weeks. His body on the roof tiles, his mustache stained, his eyes staring at a sky he could never conquer. I felt relief. I felt fear. And a strange sadness I couldn't explain. With Pablo dead, the cartel collapsed within weeks. Lieutenants killed each other. Partners betrayed one another. Hitmen sold information. The entire empire I had helped finance turned to dust. La Kika was among the first to fall. They found him in a roadside ditch on the way to Rio Negro. Someone returned years of favors in the worst possible way. I won't give details, but his end was as brutal as his life. I should have died too. I should have been just another corpse in those months. But no one came looking for me. No one remembered the accountant who worked magic with numbers. Amid the chaos, I became invisible. It was my opportunity. The only one. On January 15, 1994, I took a bus from Bogotá to Puerto Berrio. I carried only a backpack with clothes, a pistol, and the coordinates of the ceiba tree engraved in my memory. No money. No documents. Nothing that could link me to my past. The journey lasted 12 hours, along broken roads and through military checkpoints. The fear of being recognized followed me the entire way, but no one paid attention to me. I was just another man on the run, like so many others in that country. I arrived in Puerto Berrio at dawn. I rented a boat from a fisherman who asked no questions and headed back into the Magdalena Medio jungle for the second time. The heat was unbearable. The mosquitoes wouldn't leave me alone. Every sound made me think someone was following me. But I kept going. I moved along nameless rivers and paths that existed only in my memory. On the third day, I found it, the ceiba tree. It was still there, exactly as I remembered it. The enormous trunk, the roots buried like ancient arms, the branches stretching toward the sky. I dug for 8 straight hours. My hands were split open and my back was burning, but I couldn't stop. There was no way. Around 11 at night, I heard the sound of the shovel striking metal. The boxes were still there. All of them. The 227 bars I hadn't been able to carry the first time, plus the 20 I had returned to Pablo, which someone had hidden again in the same place. 247 bars of pure gold, almost 3 tons, more than $40 million. I collapsed on the edge of the hole, watching the gold shine under the flashlight, and I started laughing. A nervous, uncontrolled laugh that ended in tears and then silence. I had done it. After 10 years of lies, betrayals, and death, I finally had in front of me what I had been chasing from the very beginning. But I couldn't take it with me. 3 tons of gold. Impossible to move alone, without equipment, without transportation, without help. It would take weeks to get it all out. And I didn't have weeks. I didn't have anything. I took 10 bars, about 120 kilos, the most I could carry without collapsing. I loaded them into the boat and covered the rest again with dirt and leaves, praying no one would find it before I could return. The journey back was torture, exhaustion and paranoia. Every boat I saw made me think they were coming for me. Every distant engine sounded like a threat. But I managed to reach Puerto Berrio without incident. I sold 5 bars to a gold trader who didn't question anything, for far less than their real value, but enough to disappear from the map. With that money I bought fake documents, paid for a bus ticket toward the border, and purchased a silence I hoped would be permanent. On January 23, 1994, I crossed into Venezuela with a new identity and 5 gold bars hidden at the bottom of my suitcase. I left everything behind, my name, my family, my country, and the 237 bars still buried at the foot of the century-old ceiba tree. $40 million waiting for me in the Colombian jungle. And I was running away with less than $1 million, not knowing if I would ever have the chance to return. That was 3 weeks ago. Now I'm in Caracas, in a cheap hotel room near Maiquetía Airport. The ceiling fan makes a constant noise that won't let me sleep. The walls are stained with dampness. The mattress smells of someone else's sweat and desperation. I've been here 18 days. 18 days waiting for a contact who promised me papers to leave the continent. 18 days checking the money I have left, calculating how long I can survive before being forced to sell another gold bar. I have exactly 4 bars left. About 48 kilos. Roughly $600,000 at the current value. Enough to live 10 years if I'm careful. Enough to disappear in any third world country where nobody asks too many questions. But it isn't enough. It never is. Because every night, when I close my eyes, I see the saber tree again. I see the 237 bars buried there. I see $40 million rotting in the jungle while I rot in this miserable room. And I know I'm going back. I know I can't leave that behind. I know the same ambition that got me into all this is the one that won't let me escape. The contact called me this morning. He said the papers are ready. He said that tomorrow at 6 in the evening I must be at the port of La Guaira with $50,000 in cash. A boat will take me to Trinidad, and from there I can go anywhere. Tomorrow at 6. In 23 hours I can leave. I can take the 4 bars I have left, get on that boat, and disappear forever. Start over somewhere no one knows me. Forget the gold in the jungle. Forget Pablo. Forget everything. Or I can go back to Colombia. I can risk everything to recover what I left hidden. I can try to pull 3 tons of gold out of a jungle controlled by guerrillas, paramilitaries, and traffickers. I could die trying. Or I could become the richest man no one knows exists. I have to decide now. I look at the 4 gold bars on the bed. $600,000. A fortune for anyone. I look at the phone. The contact is waiting for my confirmation call. I look out the window. Caracas buzzes under the February sun. Horns, shouting, the noise of a city that neither knows nor cares that I exist. 40 million, or 600,000 and a new life. Greed pushes me to return. Reason begs me to run. Fear tells me that people like me never get a happy ending no matter what they choose. Someone knocks on the door. 3 times. Try. Measured. The code I had arranged with the contact for emergencies. But the meeting was tomorrow. Not today. Not now. I grab the pistol from under the pillow and walk slowly to the door. My heart is beating so hard I'm sure it can be heard from the hallway. Who is it? Silence. Then a voice I recognize. A voice that shouldn't be here. A voice I thought I would never hear again. Carlos, it's me. Open the door. Esperanza. The woman I loved. The agent who betrayed me. The only person who knows exactly who I am and what I did. How did she find me? What does she want? Who does she work for now? Did she come to kill me, or to save me? I look at the pistol in my hand. I look at the door. I look at the gold bars on the bed. I have to decide now. The gun weighs almost a kilo in my hand. I know because I've carried it so many times that I know every detail of the metal. It's a Beretta 92, the same one the accountant gave me 6 years ago, back when I still believed guns were for feeling safe and not for surviving. Esperanza knocks again. 3 times. The same code. Carlos, I know you're in there. I can hear you breathing. My mind starts racing, like I'm calculating a balance sheet. Option 1. Open the door and shoot before she says a word. Problem, I don't know if she's alone. I don't know who sent her. I don't know what information she has. Option 2. Don't open the door. Wait for her to leave. Problem, if she found me once, she can find me again. Option 3. Open the door, listen, and decide. I always choose the option that gives me more information. It's what has kept me alive. I take the safety off the pistol, step back 3 paces, and aim at the center of the door at chest height. It's open. The knob turns slowly. The door opens inward. And there she is. Esperanza Maria Restrepo, 32 years old. Black hair down to her shoulders, shorter than the last time I saw her. Dark brown eyes. The same ones that looked at me with love for 2 years and with betrayal for 1 night. She's wearing worn jeans, a white blouse, and a small backpack over her left shoulder. She doesn't appear to be armed, but that doesn't mean anything. Hello, Carlos. How did you find me? Can I come in first? No. How did you find me? She sighs. That sigh of hers I know so well, the one she makes when she knows she's going to lose the argument but tries anyway. The gold buyer in Puerto Barrio works for the same people I used to. I feel my stomach drop. The old fisherman. The one who asked no questions. Of course he didn't ask. He already knew the answers. Who do you work for now? No one. I quit 6 months ago. Lie or truth? After what happened with Pablo, everything collapsed. The CIA stopped funding operations. The Colombian government started negotiating with the cartels instead of fighting them. There was no longer any work for people like me. People like you, spies, traitors. The words hit her. I see it in her eyes. They moisten slightly before she regains her composure. I deserve that, she says. I deserve much worse. But I didn't come to fight, Carlos. I came to warn you. Warn me about what? That you're not the only one who knows about the gold. The silence that follows is so heavy it feels like an object in the room. I lower the gun 2 centimeters. Just 2. Explain. Can I come in now? I let her pass. I close the door behind her. I follow her with the pistol as she walks to the only chair in the room and sits down as if it were her house. Gustavo had a book, she says. A record of all the cartel stashes, locations, quantities, dates, everything. That's impossible. Gustavo is dead. Yes. But the book didn't die with him. Someone found it in his house after the raid. Someone who is now selling the information to the highest bidder. Who? I don't know his real name. They call him the librarian. He was one of Gustavo's accountants, someone who worked in the shadows. Nobody special, or so we thought. But it turns out he had been copying information for years, storing secrets, preparing for the day the cartel fell. I sit on the bed beside the gold bars that are still out in the open, as if they were mocking me. I should have hidden them. I should have been more careful. And this librarian knows about the Ceiba? He knows about all the stashes. Including yours. Including the 237 bars you left buried. 237. The exact number. Not one more, not one less. How do you know that number? Because the librarian sold it to me 2 weeks ago in Bogotá. He charged me $50,000 for the exact location and the complete inventory. Why would he sell you that information? Because I wanted to find you. Because I needed to find you. For what? To turn me in? To kill me yourself? To save you, Carlos? To warn you that you're not the only one already on the way to that gold? I stand up and walk toward the window. Outside, Caracas keeps moving under the afternoon sun. A street vendor shouts. A dog barks. Life continues as if none of this exists. Who else bought the information? I don't know for sure, but the librarian mentioned there were other interested buyers. People with resources. Dangerous people. It could be armed groups, or what's left of the Cali cartel, or even Mexicans buying whatever they can in Colombia. Anyone would pay millions for 40 million in gold bars. I start doing the math in my head. If he sold the information 2 weeks ago, the buyers would already have had time to organize expeditions. If they left 10 days ago, they could be reaching the Ceiba tree right now. And if they arrived earlier, the gold might already be gone. I have to go back, I say, almost without thinking. I know. That's why I came. To help you. To go with you. I laugh. A bitter laugh without joy. You. The woman who betrayed me. The spy who almost got me killed. You want me to trust you to go after $40 million. I'm not asking you to trust me, she says. I'm asking you to be practical. You can't move 3 tons of gold out of the jungle by yourself. You need support. Someone who knows the area, who has connections, and who knows how to move cargo without raising suspicion. And that someone is me. The CIA trained me for 4 years. I speak 5 languages. I have contacts in 3 countries, and I know the Magdalena Medio jungle better than many of the guerrillas who live there. Why would you do this? What do you gain? 20%. There it was, the truth behind the warning, the concern, those tears that were never sincere. Money. It's always about money. 10, I say. 12, and not one bar more. Esperanza smiles. The same smile that made me fall in love 4 years ago, when I still believed love was a place where I could belong. Deal. We leave Caracas that same night. Esperanza had a rented car waiting in the hotel parking lot. A white 1989 Toyota Corolla, Venezuelan plates, full tank. The 4 gold bars go in the trunk, wrapped in dirty clothes to hide the weight. The plan is simple. Cross the border through Cucuta, where Esperanza has a contact who can get us through without inspection. Then head down to Puerto Barrio on secondary roads, avoiding military checkpoints and armed zones. Reach the Ceiba, retrieve the gold, and disappear before anyone else can try. Simple. Except nothing in my life has been simple since I accepted that first job with the accountant. The drive to the border takes 14 hours. 14 hours of broken roads, empty towns, and the uncomfortable silence between 2 people who once loved each other and now don't know how to speak. Esperanza drives 7 hours. I drive the other 7. We don't talk about the past or what's left between us. Only logistics, routes, timing, possible complications. It's easier that way. Safer. We reach Cucuta at dawn. The border city is already awake despite the early hour, full of merchants, smugglers, and desperate people trying to cross in any direction. Esperanza's contact waits for us at an abandoned gas station outside town. A short, stocky man with a scar running across his face. He doesn't say his name. He doesn't ask ours. He simply holds out his hand. 500 each. I give him $1,000 in cash. He checks the bills like someone who has done it thousands of times. Follow me. Don't talk. Don't look at anyone. If we get stopped, you're my cousins going to a funeral in Bucaramanga. We cross through a dirt road beside the Taquira River. No guards. No checkpoints. Just dust and silence. The contact leaves us on the Colombian side and disappears without saying goodbye. We're back in the country where I was born. Where I became rich. And where I lost far too much. The land of Pablo, of Gustavo, of all the dead I left behind. The smell is different. More humid. Greener. More alive. The air carries that taste of mountain and coffee that doesn't exist anywhere else. For a moment I feel something like nostalgia. Then I remember why I left. And nostalgia turns into fear. We head down toward Puerto Barrio, following the road along the Magdalena River. The landscape slowly changes. Cold mountains become suffocating valleys. Andean towns become tropical settlements. The heat rises with every kilometer until breathing becomes difficult. At 3 in the afternoon we stop in a nameless town to refuel and buy food. Esperanza goes into a small store while I watch the car. A boy, maybe 10 years old, approaches asking for coins. I give him 5,000 pesos and tell him to move along. He looks at me with eyes far too old for his age and disappears between the houses. Esperanza returns with bread, cheese, and 2 bottles of water. We eat in silence, sitting on the hood of the car, watching the brown river flow slowly north. "What are you thinking about?" she asks. "Nothing." A lie. "You're always thinking about something. You never stop." She's right. My mind never stops. I'm calculating probabilities. 60% chance we arrive before the others. 40% chance we're already too late. 30% chance we survive if there's a confrontation. 10% chance Esperanza won't betray me again. "I'm thinking about how much time we have," I finally say. "Before everything goes to hell." We arrive in Puerto Barrio at nightfall. The town looks more deteriorated than I remember. Mud streets. Leaning wooden houses. The heat is unbearable even at night, humidity clinging to the skin. Esperanza has another contact here. A fisherman who rents boats without asking questions. We find him in a bar by the dock, drinking aguardiente alone. "We need a boat," Esperanza says. "For 3 days. With enough fuel to reach the Carar region and come back." The fisherman looks at us with tired eyes. "The Carar area is complicated," he says. The paramilitaries moved in there, and people say some new guys showed up a few days ago, gringos or something like that. Armed. Looking for trouble. My stomach drops. New people. Armed. Looking for something. How many? I asked. I don't know, 5, maybe 6. Came in 2 big boats like the ones the narcos use. Went upriver and haven't come back. How many days ago? 3 or 4. I look at Esperanza. She looks at me. We don't need words. They got there first. We need that boat. Now. The fisherman asks 500,000 pesos per day, plus fuel, plus a 2 million deposit in case we don't return. I pay everything without arguing. He pockets the money and leads us to the dock. A small aluminum boat with an outboard motor waits there. If you get into trouble, he says while untying the ropes. I don't know you. I nod. We leave Puerto Berrio at 9 at night, moving upriver under a moonless sky. Esperanza handles the motor. I watch the riverbank through binoculars we found in the boat. The jungle forms a dark wall on both sides. Dense. Impenetrable. We travel 6 hours without stopping. The river narrows. Trees lean toward the water. The sounds of the jungle grow louder, night animals, birds, insects, everything blending into a constant roar. At 3 in the morning we reach the tributary that leads toward the Ceiba. A narrow stream. Low branches force us to duck. Here, I say. Esperanza cuts the engine. The silence is absolute. What's wrong? She whispers. Listen. At first, nothing. Then something. A metallic sound. Repetitive. Shovels hitting dirt. Someone is digging beneath the ceiba tree. Escobar treated people as if they were chess pieces, and in this case he chose someone who symbolized everything he opposed: an independent press, democracy, and institutions. It was a chess move in which no one came out winning. Escobar lost support, the government lost a crucial voice, and the Tubby family lost a daughter, a mother, and a dedicated professional. All because of a war that for years seemed endless. Diana Tubby's case was not the only one. During that tense phase of the early 1990s, Escobar bet on a strategy of extreme pressure. If the Colombian government did not stop extraditions, he would respond by depriving politically influential figures of their freedom. That is how the name Maruja Pachon became linked to this story. It was December 1990. Maruja Pachon Castro, a journalist and former official in the Ministry of Education, was leaving a meeting accompanied by her sister-in-law, Beatriz Villamizer, who was her assistant. The two were about to get into the car when they were intercepted by an armed group. Everything happened in a matter of seconds. Those responsible knew perfectly well who they were looking for. Both women were taken immediately. Behind the operation, once again, was Pablo Escobar. The order came directly from the highest level of the cartel. Maruja was the wife of Alberto Villamizar, a former congressman with strong government connections and a key figure in the defense of extraditing drug traffickers. In other words, she was not a random victim. For several months, Maruja and Beatriz were held in different locations. They were moved constantly, always under supervision. It was a rigid routine, with limited schedules, controlled meals, and a constant fear of what might happen. Meanwhile, outside, negotiations moved forward slowly. Maruja's husband became directly involved in the attempts to secure her release. It became clear that Escobar was trying to force an agreement. He was willing to surrender only if the government guaranteed that he and the other cartel leaders would not be sent to the United States. The problem was that the people being held had become a kind of bargaining chip. Every step forward meant a risk, every setback was a warning. And time kept passing. All of Colombia followed the situation closely. It was impossible to ignore the power the cartel had at that moment. The case gained international attention. The detention of Maruja and Beatriz was part of a series of actions intended to pressure then-President Cesar Gaviria into giving in. Escobar wanted the law to change, and he was willing to go very far to achieve it. The drama also became a symbol of the level of influence organized crime had reached. It was no longer just about drug trafficking. The cartel had political, military, and media reach, and it used fear as its main tool. After nearly 6 months, Maruja and Beatriz regained their freedom. It was an enormous relief, but the experience left deep scars. Maruja began speaking more openly about the impact of organized crime, wrote books, and participated in public debates. Beatriz, more reserved, also faced a long process of emotional recovery. The chain of kidnappings during that time made clear the kinds of strategies Escobar was willing to use. He did not see people, he saw pieces. And if those pieces had connections to power, even better. Diana Tiboli, Maruja Pachon, Beatriz Villamizer. The names changed, but the logic was always the same. The Medellin cartel targeted people connected to the government, the media, and public influence, everything aimed at stopping extradition and maintaining control over their fate. And as incredible as it may seem, for a time it worked. The government found itself trapped between saving lives and refusing to give in to extortion. Within all these stories, one thing becomes clear. Pablo Escobar was not just a criminal wanted internationally. He was someone who extended his desire for control into every aspect of life. It was not enough for him to control trafficking routes, bribe politicians, or challenge governments. He also needed to dominate the people around him, especially women. Some became involved out of affection, others because of the influence he exerted, and others simply found themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time. But all of them ended up becoming pieces in a violent game that only made sense in his mind. In the end, what is most striking is not the violence or the money, but how he managed to turn human relationships into instruments of manipulation. And perhaps that is why these stories still resonate. They show what happens when a criminal empire treats lives as disposable, even the lives of those he claimed to care about. Don't forget to subscribe to see more content like this.